Hello, my friends. As the world watches what's happening right now on the streets of Iran with women, and also what's happening in the streets of the former Soviet Union, Russia, it is obvious that we are in the midst of a paradigm shift. There is something very powerful going on, and that is that the fragile, and I use these words very carefully, the fragile power of Iranian women might be the tipping point for a new story for humanity. The world has always looked with hope to women, at least now, as an emerging power capable of changing the paradigm of war, violence, and national hostility. Once again, the world is looking to women as an emerging power capable of changing the paradigm of war, violence, and nationalist hostility. In Iran, the street power and the street protest by women is a very fragile sign of this emerging power. The Arab Spring gave warning that direct confrontation with oppression can have disastrous results. So if you don't want hope to be crushed again, we, the rest of the world, must follow steps that nourish hope, which I've frequently said is a kind of an oxymoron because it suggests despair. So we must nourish creativity, insight, intuition, higher consciousness, and transcendence, and what I may dare to say, the power of divine feminine energies to bring about the transformation that is so desperately needed, a new story for humanity. So even though it's very tempting, we must resist the temptation to moralize or blame, understand that context is everything. We must also be careful not to fuel us versus them thinking. We must be mindful of the cultural values of other people. The fog of war applies to the fog of beliefs as well. The only way out of this fog of ancient, outmoded, arcane beliefs is to understand that the other is also a reflection of ourselves. So we must understand the other as fully as we understand ourselves. And we must express human values like compassion and empathy. That all goes without saying. But what is really happening right now is that we are seeing some turbulence in our collective consciousness as the paradigm shifts, as the mindset of humanity shifts. And for whatever reason, our Iranian women, our Iranian sisters, mothers, daughters, wives, friends have been chosen to lead the way. The history of humanity is the history of violence, is the history of war. And this has been going on even before hunter-gatherer times. It's the law of the jungle. The one who has more muscles rules, and power and force are equated. And this has been going on, not since medieval times, but even before that, hunter-gatherer times, and even when we were part of the ecosystem of a jungle. And that gave rise to dominantly male societies, or societies dominated by the masculine energy or the masculine archetypes: war, violence, predation, conquest, dominance. And that perhaps did ensure our survival as a species in the early beginnings of human evolution. But right now, that has become totally irrelevant. And, many of the metaphors that we use, we still use them because we are so conditioned to use them. We use metaphors of violence, star wars, going out there to create war. Okay, war against cancer, war against drugs, war against racism, war against social injustice, war against economic injustice, war against all kinds of illnesses as well, mental illness. These metaphors go back to a very ancient time, and they're influenced by context. And the context is historical, the context is economic, the context is religious, the context is the recycling of culture. But the recycling of culture is also accompanied by evolutionary leaps. And when those evolutionary leaps occur, then an old paradigm dies and a new paradigm is born. Right? Paradigm is just a mindset, a collective zeitgeist. It's created by context, meaning, relationship, and story. And those stories that go back to medieval, tribal times, and even before that, have dominated the world. And if we continue with those stories, then certainly we are sleepwalking to extinction. Today's problems include an unsustainable planet, social, economic, gender injustice, racial injustice, extreme loss of life through violence, mechanized instruments of death, nuclear weapons, biological warfare, chemical warfare, all kinds of war, old way of solving problems, totally uncreative and totally useless because nobody wins in the end. Recycles as intergenerational trauma. And that paradigm is not going to work. It's going to lead to our collective extinction. So we do need a new energy. We do need the evolution of human consciousness. And we do need the empowerment of women. For thousands of years, for millennia, women have been dominated by predatory, masculine, violent energy. They have been subjugated. And yet it is women who nourish us for 9 months after the ovum has been fertilized. It's not enough to plant a seed. The ground has to be fertile for life to emerge. And each of us comes from the womb of a mother. Doesn't matter what your gender identity is. Each of us comes from the womb of a mother. She's the fertile ground of existence in which the seed blossoms into fruits and flowers and buds and new life. New life. Just look at any part of your body. And right now, all your ancestors are active in your body as the genetic activity. But that's not all that is happening. All your ancestors are alive without a single chain without a single break in the chain of being, going back to the first organisms that lived in the rims of volcanoes, chemolitho-autotrophic hyperthermophiles, and those genes then evolved into other genetic information, mostly bacterial, fungal, and viral, into ultimately the genetic activity of plants, animals, mammals, and ultimately humans. And so right now in you is the history of evolution. But also there's the history of motherhood, because each one of us was not only seeded by a man, but also it was the nourishing energy that we call mother that helped transform that fertilizer ovum into what we call a human being. The history of intergenerational trauma is epigenetically programmed in our genes, especially the violence against women. So Iranian women, maybe you have been chosen, maybe you have been chosen right now through historical circumstance to lead the empowerment of women globally. It's not just women being dominated, enslaved, subjugated, or felt preyed upon is a uniquely local phenomenon. It's dominated global cultures. But at a certain point, collective consciousness reaches a tipping point, critical mass. And when that happens, then the collective consciousness emerges into a new story, a new context, new meaning, new purpose, new vision, an evolutionary leap in creativity. Now more than any other time in history, we need that transformation. We need that for our own salvation. So with respect, with humility, with deference, with politeness, with extreme patience, let us all remind ourselves that a medieval tribal story that dominates the world globally, not just in certain regions, is becoming irrelevant. The old story has to die, and a new story must emerge. So let us together support the fragile power of not only Iranian women, but women across the world. Across the world. You are the inspiration and will be the inspiration for a human civilization that will be nourished by beauty, by intuition, by deep affection, deep love, deep empathy, deep compassion, deep appreciation, deep gratitude, deep listening, and deep transformation. The women of the world are going to do it for us, and we need to support them. We owe our mothers the deep respect and the sacred intention for life to evolve. The feminine archetypes of true power, not fundamental power, being mistaken with force or violence, true power to emerge. The power we associate with the feminine archetypes such as Hera and Shakti and Durga, they are emerging. The power to destroy the veil of ignorance. It's very interesting that a veil is being lifted. A veil is being lifted. And so too, as the divine feminine emerges into world leadership, it will be part of all of us. The divine feminine that encompasses everything from the mother to the nourishing energy of the mother, to beauty, to sensuality, to a love with nature, a love of nature, understanding healing, understanding the depths of the subconscious and the supraconscious mind, and transcendence will become the new modalities of power, leading to a new world and leading to a new humanity. And for this, we thank the fragile power emerging today, happens to be in Iran, but affects all of us. Let us nourish it, let us protect it, let us become the stewards of a new story for humanity that could lead, I hope, to a more peaceful, just, sustainable, healthier, and joyful world. Let us resurrect Ananda Shakti, the Shakti of divine joy.